Добрий день, я вітаю.
Hello, welcome everyone who's joined Media Center at Ukrinform. This is Olga Tumanova, and hello everyone who's joined us online and offline. It's been a second year of the full-scale invasion, and we're continuing to discuss different relevant topics, and we're talking about declaring today. We have Artem Sytnyk, Deputy Head of the National Agency on Corruption Prevention, and also Yulia Kulikova, Head of the NACP's Department for Full Scrutiny. Let's talk about the backstory of the whole process. What happened, what kind of algorithm going to be in place. Thank you very much for that. Thank you for the possibility to talk about this, to talk about the change that will be implemented in terms of the declaration scrutiny procedure. Well, just to remind you that the declarations is one of the tools for financial control. There are three components like that. The first one is declaring, lifestyle vetting, and complex checking. All of them exist separately, but the ultimate goal is to make sure that people that have problems with integrity or that have some assets they cannot explain, they don't gain access to governmental service. And we want to get rid of people that that have problems with declarations. And since the full-scale invasion, transparency, accountability is a key thing to ensure countries' defense capacity, and also at the NACP, our capacity, our possibility to ensure integrity will affect the defense of the country. Well, NACP works in two different areas. Well, first, we would like to use the resources, the human resources that we have in hand, and we're pretty limited in resources. On the other hand, we do everything to simplify people's lives, to make sure that filling out declarations is simple, because there was a lot of criticism about filling out forms. We worked on that, and we have created a specific section in the personal profile where people can get right information from the registers, state registers. They can get that information, they can fill out the forms using that information. If you compare the process back in 2016 and now, the process has been very simplified for the declarants. And we want to make it as efficient as possible, because we know that we have so many declarations coming. Before the war, we had 1 million of declarations per declaration campaign. Now we have 2.5 million. It's not an exact figure. We have 3 years as a declaration period. Now the campaign is going on for 2021, 2022. In all, people who are obliged to declare in January, they have to declare their assets since 2021, and this complicates our work a lot, because it's very hard when you complete two different declarations. Like, you have to separate two different periods, and lots of declarants, they sometimes would declare assets for the recent periods, because it's just simple for them. It's easier for them, more comfortable for them to do that. Speaking about full scrutiny, the law on that took the declaration back, introduced some new norms. I would like to talk about how it was organized back in the days. So before, we would get, for example, 1 million declarations from 800,000 declarants. And we used to have the law on obligatory full scrutiny. So there was a list of positions, how higher positions like MPs and heads of governmental agencies, the president. And there was a list of positions like that involved full scrutiny. But because we're limited in resources, out of that huge pool of declarations, we could only check around 1,000. And it was mostly same people, same MPs, because after the declaration campaign was over, we had to do it all over again. We would go starting from presidents, going down the hierarchy, and when between the declaration periods, we will get back to the same point. And lots of declarations that weren't covered by the NACP's process, except for when there were complaints about these particular people. Maybe that person was in the bottom of the poll, or maybe there was a journalist investigation and something was uncovered. This is why we had to check the person's assets. Maybe there was some police reports coming in. We would exchange materials with the police, and then we did full scrutiny, and then a decision would be made. So this approach had some flaws, because everybody would expect that all declarations would be checked, but we didn't have enough resources at NACP. This is why we've listened to the feedback, people criticizing that we were not checking 100% of declarations. What has changed? As I mentioned, the law has changed, and now it's obligatory. I used to be obligatory, and now it's not obligatory anymore. They're not using the word obligatory. They're basically doing the full scrutiny anyway. So it gives us a possibility to change our approach towards checks, and we can do that risk-oriented and flexible. And what I mean by that, when we ceased the full scrutiny process, we would concentrate on the monitoring, and we told you a lot about that, about the results and the procedures. Besides, we try to use that pause, that break, after we ceased the full scrutiny process, to build upon a full database, create IT products that can allow us to run this risk-oriented approach. As of today, if we talk about the new approach, all declarations that will be submitted during the declaration complaint will be covered by NACP, and all declarations will be assessed through automatic check system. That means that every declaration, you can see at the slide that actually all declarations are checked automatically using our software packages. There are a couple of stages of that checking against state databases and registers, compliance check of the data included in the declarations. Then these declarations are checked against sources of assets, if there are no incompliances, no problems, this declaration's automatic check is complete. That doesn't mean that the full check is completed according to the law, but this declaration has a minimum risk coefficient, and after this declaration was automatically checked, the declarant receives a notification in the personal profile. And you can see that out of 1 million of declaration that we expect, 1/3 of declarations passes this automatic check, and this 1/3 of declarants get notifications that the declarations were automatically checked. It doesn't happen in one day because the information system has its own resource, has its own capacity. So if we run these checks and the declarant doesn't get notification, that doesn't mean that the declaration failed that automatic check. Maybe it's ongoing and it has to wait. You have to wait for a couple of days. The rest of the declarations, it's about 70%. It doesn't mean that these declarations have compliance problems, and it doesn't mean that all these declarations will result in criminal persecution, but these declarations, we're applying risk-oriented approach towards these declarations, and they run an assessment check on these declarations. So the higher the risk score they get, the higher the chance that these declarations will be manually checked. So we're just checking these declarations for obvious risks, and the response coefficient will be much higher for these declarations than before the legislation was amended. I would also like to say that the automatic check doesn't mean that NACP can't get back to that declaration later to do a full scrutiny check. Maybe we receive some information from other law enforcement, from journalists or from international agencies about this specific declarant, about some illicit enrichment sources, or maybe other assets that were not indicated in the declaration. So after we receive that information, we can get back to that declaration despite it completed the automatic check. And then we can do a full scrutiny procedure with specific measures. So I'd like to focus on that. The automatic check doesn't mean doing full check. It just means that certain stages were completed, and Yulia will tell you more about that. And if we discover any new information, that will probably be a reason for us to get back to that declaration. There was a high-profile case about the Odessa drafting office chief in Odessa. Later, we received some information about this person's family members, about their assets abroad. So we sent that information to police, and charges were made. I would also like to focus on the fact that in this approach, we've divided concepts of incomplete data and fake data, because certain officials were frustrated because their declarations would be fully checked. Sometimes people would fail to identify their zip codes and some in-specific, non-specific information, or maybe some incomplete information. So we separate unreliable or incorrect information and incomplete information. So incomplete data means that these data financial equivalent is less than the administrative liability. So unreliable or incorrect information means that we have to run the check, and there's a risk of pressing charges, criminal charges, or maybe we can get some clarification from the declarant. So let's talk about the amounts. Like, what is that liability threshold amount, to make sure that people understand? So for administrative liability, that means 268,000 hryvnias. In 2024, there's going to be 302,000 hryvnias. So it's linked to the on-text minimum sum. So now it's not going to be uncomfortable for declarants who didn't provide complete information, because we can't spend too much of our time on cases like that. What kind of result were you expecting from that? The change in the approach will make sure that in the risk rating we may have, like, for example, a member of parliament and fire brigade chief that has assets that he can't explain. So it doesn't matter what the position is. It's about the risk. It's about the assets that they have. And basically every declaration will be covered by NACP, and it will be checked for compliance with state registers, and depending on the result, this declaration will get a specific risk score. Another thing, the fact that we are focusing on declarations with higher risk score checks that need follow-up in the form of criminal persecution, the efficiency of this process will be improved drastically, because we will focus on those declarations that have higher risk score. I would like to add something about the automated check. There's an important aspect. Those declarants that receive the automated check certificate, well, they just receive it for information. That doesn't mean that their declaration is automatically okay. So they just receive some information about some problems with the data, maybe some problems with the registers, because if they don't correct that mistakes, these mistakes will be made in the future. Also, the whole procedure, the full scrutiny procedure has changed, because we had information and feedback from the public and the declarants. The public wanted more efficiency. They wanted more facts. They wanted more cases about illicit enrichment. And sometimes they would indicate incorrect data. So we had to respond to both requests. Now we have amended the full scrutiny procedure. So for declarants that will have their declarations checked, we won't going to ask them about data. They will correct their declarations or register. We will just focus not on incomplete data, but we will focus on incorrect data. We're not going to ask them about small things. The second thing that changed, we will ask them about assets that we don't have information for because they are not in the registers. And the changes for the declarants are, back in the days, the declarant could provide us with copies of documents. Now it's changed. The declarant is obliged to provide documents like that to confirm the data in the declaration. And at the same time, they can provide justifications. So justifications are not obligatory, but the submitting documents is obligatory, and it can affect the check results. Authorized persons will make decisions based on documents, so it's in the interest of the declarants to approve and justify the information. Besides, the declarant has less load in terms of providing justifications. We have less information to check conflict of interest, and there are two things that we are investigating as part of the full scrutiny procedure. Present compliance and also overlapping position compliance. We've spent almost 2 years during the break to increase amount of information that can be obtained during the automatic check procedure. So this simplifies it for the declarants, and we will get more information from the register, and we will ask less information from the declarants themselves. These are the changes. Now we understand the declaration process for 2021-2022 is ongoing. So can you say anything about that? How actively Ukrainians are in submitting declarations like that? What do you see? Before giving you the answer, I would like to point out, when declaration is passed an automatic check, not only the declarant learns about that, but also interested parties like journalists and other people can get that notification. Speaking about 2021-2022 period, the declaration happened even before the process became obligatory, because lots of declarants submitted their declarations voluntarily, and it was very comfortable. And speaking about the number of declarations after the law was approved, I can't say that we received a lot more declarations like that, but the trend was the less corruption risks is related to the certain position, the more people submit declarations. And we had different categories, like we had MPs, members of government. So the trend is the higher the corruption risks are for the person position, the less people are trying to submit declarations. Now, when after it became obligatory, people started to more actively submit their declarations, but risky declarations will be submitted at the end of the campaigns. It's going to be late January 2024. I know that the public expects some immediate results, but the approach that we have discussed, it will be applied for declarations that were already submitted. It doesn't apply to declarations that were submitted in 2021, 2022. And while these declarations are submitted, the rating will be changed. So the risky declarations will be submitted at the end of the period, and this is the trend that we have observed before. Besides, a declarant has a month to correct information. If he needs to correct the information he submitted, he has a month to do so. So that means if the deadline is 31st of January and he has to correct his information, the next time he submits information is March. So please consider that. So probably the declarations with higher risk scores, it will be submitted by the end of the period, maybe even in March. Do we understand correctly? The declarations for top officials will be automatically checked and it won't be submitted to you. Yes, if these declarations are okay, if they're compliant, if they are checked for illicit enrichment, even if it's a higher position, but if they have no conformity problems, I'm not talking about non-complete information, I'm talking about incorrect information or risky information, they won't reach us. But if we receive further information about some uncovered assets, foreign assets, we will check it. I know that governmental agencies, they find looking for different IT solutions to increase efficiency, but there are certain risks. So can you intervene into that automatic check system? Well, there will be attempts to hack the system. That's for sure, because that happened before the war, after the war started, and now. So I think that's true. Governmental resources are always under attack, especially from our aggressors' side. So when we developed these IT products, we try to protect information as much as possible. This is why we're trying to minimize the risks. And number two, I would like to point out that the human factor, while assigning the risk scores are non-existent, so there's no discretion of the authorized person. So the human factor is always there. And in terms of anti-corruption measures, that risk is impossible. That's what you say. That's impossible. We have automatic distribution. When the pool of declarations is shaped, we just send these declarations, send this list for distribution. So it's automatically assigned among different authorized persons. And then the risk rating is assigned without any intervention to minimize discretion, to ensure there's no criticism about the process. That was the priority when we designed the automatic check mechanism. So, dear colleagues, what about the questions? Do you have any questions? Yulia Gadina, current forum. I have one question. Do you have these data? According to U.S. statistics, since the declaration is published, how many declarations you revoked? And can you say who the declarants are? Well, of course, we can't name the declarants because there's no point in ensuring security for these declarations. Well, we receive requests to revoke declarations. We still receive requests like that. On our side, we didn't prolong the process, and we're not going to tell you the number of declarants because you basically can do some math and find out all of the requests were processed. That's what I can say. And when these declarations were published, every request that we received so far, we processed it. And if they had to be revoked, we revoked them. So when you receive a request like that, can you check it for compliance or something against parameters? Actually, we've been asked that question very often. And for the next time, I'd like to say that the regulation, the revoking regulation, was designed without our participation, and the active legislation doesn't give us a mandate to control the integrity of the information in the declaration, in the request. We just check the form. Are there any grounds to revoke any declaration from online access? We don't have any part in that, so only the ministry is responsible for that. Or some local authorities, like whoever signed that petition or request. So there will be question asked, and then the police will have to respond to that, because if any wrong data were intentionally included in the declaration, that's a criminal liability. We have some online questions. We can ask them quickly. So NACP approved an order about the list of people eligible for full scrutiny. If these persons, they weren't eligible for the full scrutiny before, now they are, how are they going to check their declarations for 2023, or maybe starting from 2021, because they worked at this position, but they hasn't submitted declarations for 2023? And do you have to amend declarations for 2021 and 2022? Actually, it consists of two different questions. I will start with the second one about the amendment of submitted declarations. I'd like to point out that the law 3384 has changed some information about the periodically checked information. You could make corrections 3 times. Now you can make corrections only once, but during 30 days. The law gave possibility for all declarants who voluntarily submitted their declarations during the martial law period. They can submit their corrected declarations, and to do that, they within 14 days they could apply to NACP, and that term ended on the 25th of October. So all applications for corrections we received, we've provided these people 100% chance to make corrections. And if the deadline was over, we have to say no. But we all recommend, if you discovered any mistakes, you can notify us in your personal profile. And when we do financial control, we will take that information into account. As far as the first question is concerned, if I understand it correctly, it was the following question. So, how are we going to select declarations for full scrutiny? All declarations are different because people had different income levels at different points, and the dynamic is pretty changeable. So we would use different approaches for different declarations. Now we have cases where declarants submitted separate declarations. So all these declarations for different periods, they will have different ratings. So the head of the, or deputy head of the NACP will define what declarations will be selected for which periods of time. So, for example, if the deadline to press charges against the declarations for 2015 is over, there is no point in checking that. So we will focus on declarations for 2021, 2022, and then 2023. The next question is about incomes obtained abroad. So section 11 is it's probably about incomes. When the declarant's wife crossed the border, got some incentives and financial assistance, and then they got some salary there. How do you include that information in the declaration? Yes, it's a good question. You probably heard about the formula for illicit enrichment. If the family lived abroad and if they received any income, if they suffered any losses, or if they spent anything, that information will be reflected in the relevant section to make sure that the formula works. At the same time, since the first days of the war, we've mentioned that we understand that it's very hard sometimes to confirm incomes because sometimes people lose their papers, or maybe then they can't get any proof for such income. So we've came up with that solution. If that income was obtained abroad, if you don't have any papers, you don't have to specify that. But if you do have them, it's better to include that information because this is the money, this is the income that you lived for maybe a year. How do you make risk assessment? What is the formula? Where I can find it? This document is called the Procedure for the Selection of Declarations for Full Scrutiny. And this document was registered at the Ministry of Justice. Before that, it was just an internal document. Now it's publicly registered. You can find it on a legal resource and rada.gov.ua, so it's official document now. On the 7th of December this year, it came into force, so it's a pretty new document. A question from media that watches online. How you can find out about declarations that received a higher risk score? Thank you for the question. Since the rating, as it was mentioned, is changing like every minute because the submitted declaration receives rating dynamically, so will probably receive the final ratings in March, when people will send us all of the declarations, corrected declarations, and when these declarations will be assessed, we'll receive a stable rating. So it will probably be finalized in March next year, when the assessment is made, when the ratings is complete, and when the automatic checks are made as well. These are declarations for 21, 22. And as soon as the declaration campaign is over for 2023, when these people will have their declarations automatically checked, and this score will be finalized. So we have lots of these declarations, and we can say that the finalized score will be received in March for 2021, 2022, and for 2023 it will probably get it in May. So journalists will be able to see the ratings with the higher risk score. You can get that information by request. Do you have any more questions? Okay, the last one. What NACP registers you check the information against? How reliable is that? It's quick and reliable. I'd say that we've expanded the amount of information that can be checked automatically. Early in 2022, that was 33% of data. But after we stop checking documents, we now we have 74% of declarations. 74% of data in declarations are checked automatically, and these are registers with vehicles, with income, with property, stocks, heritage, and we have enough information about that, and it's a part of now our automatic check function. So this is the proof that the government knows that information for sure. So we'll probably have more questions later. You're getting declarations and questions in hundreds. So where do we contact if we have questions? We have a contact center. It's a non-stop hotline, and we're very motivated to get information for declarants. And they have a lot of things to do, 3 packages of information, lots of data. So apart from the hotline, we have guidelines, and now we pay a lot of attention to working with authorized persons. We run different trainings, so please ask authorized persons, because they are our partners and we want to expand their capacity. We want to increase their competency. So please contact your authorized person. If you didn't receive the answer to a question, we will answer to a question in written form, but first contact them. What happens on the 27th? Will declarants see the automatic check results, and will the society see that results? If I understand your question correctly, we already partially answered that question. If your declaration was automatically checked if you're a declarant, you will see the notification in your profile. You will get a message. The text is unified, and you will receive it in your personal profile. Speaking about the public, journalists, anyone that is interested in a specific declaration, you can just access the public part of the declaration. And if the automatic check was completed, you will see that. You will see the specific notification that the automatic check was completed for that specific declaration. What happens on the 27th? So just to sum it up, declaration rating is dynamic, is constantly changing. Now we assess declarations that were submitted voluntarily or that were submitted after the break. So the rating will change all the time because people will keep submitting their declarations. The reason why we're talking about March, after we receive all the declarations, we will finalize the rating. And also, you will get that information by request. Artem, Yulia, thank you very much for that conversation, because we've received a lot of information, a lot of answers. Thank you very much for your interest in that topic, and we continue to work for our victory. Thank you to our armed forces, and glory to Ukraine.